The Forbidden Room, Unveiling the Witch's Secrets. Scary stories. I am originally from a very beautiful town, San Sebastian del Oeste, Jalisco, a town formerly dedicated to mining. If you do a little research, you will see how beautiful that place is. However, the story that I bring you today is not very beautiful. On the contrary, it is the most terrifying story I have ever lived. I no longer live in Mexico. My husband works in Canada. When we got married, we went to live in British Columbia. I was raised by my paternal grandmother, as my mother died when I was born, and I rarely saw my father, as he worked in Vallarta, so practically most of my time was spent with my grandmother. We lived in an old house. I don't remember how many rooms it had. I don't think I ever counted them. The fact is that when I was a child, I loved to run through the corridors. However, my grandmother always warned me not to open the closed rooms because I could be bitten by an insect, like a Capullin spider or a scorpion. You know how we are as children. When we are told not to do something, we do the opposite. So you know, I would run and open the doors that had the key on them. Most of the rooms were completely empty. Only one of them was padlocked. I would always ask my grandmother why that room was kept locked, to which she would always reply that she kept her memories there. That room was the object of my obsession, because when I could not enter, I used to look under the door or through the hole through which the key enters to open the door. I could not see the big thing, a white dress, a bed, a divan, and a huge mirror, very ornate. Several times I was scolded by my grandmother. For some strange reason, she did not want me to go near that room. One afternoon, when I was alone, I approached the room and began to look through the lock of the door. Inside, something was moving behind the mirror. Not even 2 seconds passed when I noticed that indeed in the mirror was reflected the figure of a person. I did not stop to see what form it had, so immediately I took my eye off the lock and heard noises inside the room. I panicked and ran out into the street. As soon as my grandmother arrived, I told her everything I saw in the room while she was crying. After listening to me, she only told me, "I told you not to go near there." Time went by, and I never went near that room again until I grew up and forgot about that incident. My grandmother died, and my dad and I took over the house. My grandmother kept a key ring in a drawer with a key to every corner of the house, so we decided to try them out. To my bad luck, it was our turn to open that room that my grandmother forbade me so much. As I say, it usually happens that when we grow up, we forget about certain situations that usually happen to us. That's what happened to me with that room. That time, as soon as I opened the door, some memories were unlocked. The first of them was that I never really entered that room. The room had an unpleasant smell, a musty smell of years. I think that my grandmother would never have opened that door to let the air in. I remembered the dress. I remembered the couch and the bed. Everything was so old-fashioned, maybe from my grandmother's time or older. My dad and I went through the drawers of an old closet inside the room. We couldn't find anything of value. I found an old notebook signed by a name that was unknown to my father. He told me that that house was bought by my grandfather, but he was not the builder. Before that, a lady lived there. According to him, my great-grandfather and the owner of the house were compadres or something like that. I do not remember well. The fact is that when my great-grandfather's compadre died, after some years, the widow decided to sell the house to my great-grandfather. That was how they got it, my dad believed. That the notebook belonged to that lady. As you can imagine, curiosity got the better of me, and I stopped to read what was written in the notebook. I thought it was a diary, but it turned out to be something very frightening. It was a witchcraft manual. It contained phrases that looked like invocations accompanied by strange symbols, although some pages were illegible because the humidity had swallowed the paper. My dad suggested me to leave that notebook. I obeyed him. I threw it inside a black bag where we were placing everything that was garbage, and I continued checking the drawer where I found the notebook. My dad left the room, heading to the bathroom. It seemed unbelievable, but as soon as my father left the room, I began to have this feeling of fear. It was like a sixth sense that something bad was going to happen. I was already in my 20s, so I was embarrassed to run out looking for my father, so I forced myself to continue cleaning. In order not to be afraid, I began to sing a song out loud and continued going through the drawer. I put my hand in blindly and felt something strange. I took it in my hand and saw that it was a kind of lock of hair tangled in a kind of strip of skin, which looked more like a gut with which they wrapped the sausages. I was overcome with a feeling of disgust that I could not control. I dropped the disgusting thing, went to the door, and vomited. When I managed to control myself, I heard a sound like bells behind me. First, it sounded very faint. Then the bells formed a melody similar to those that sound in old musical boxes. This forced me to turn quickly in the direction of the room. I saw that, in front of the mirror, there was the image of a woman with a musical box in her hands. I screamed, then ran out to meet my dad halfway and told him I saw someone in the mirror. My father, although understanding, is usually very incredulous. So he told me to follow him into the room, and I would realize that no one was inside the mirror. My father has always provided me with security, so even in fear, I decided to follow him. Just as my father promised, inside the mirror we could only see the reflection of both of us, although on the floor we saw something that wasn't there, a little musical box made of tin. My dad bent down to pick up the box. It was at that moment when we heard footsteps in the hallway. I felt scared again and could not help but scream. My father asked me to calm down. He approached the door to see who was walking. When we saw how the woman I looked in the mirror peeked her face in a corner of the door. The Witch and the Mirror horror story. I felt myself fade away. Immediately my father hugged me and began to pray the creed. The frightening face vanished. My father told me that it was better to get out of there. Later we would see what to do, if we would take a priest or hire other people to do the job. I listened far away to my father, and I kept feeling that I was fading away. I remember that he took me down the hallway to the main room of the house, which has a huge mirror on one of the walls next to the staircase. It would be the devil's work that the image of that damn scary witch was there again. At that moment, my father covered my eyes and continued praying without stopping. I do not know where my father got so much courage that day. If I were him, I would leave my daughter and run away. However, he is not like that. He kept covering my eyes and praying without stopping until that terrifying vision disappeared. I don't remember much else about that night. My father and I went to live in Puerto Vallarta, where I met Rui, my husband, to whom I have told this story many times. The last time I saw my father, that terrifying event came up. To my surprise, my father had news of what happened. It turns out that, on a certain occasion, he met with one of the new owners of my grandmother's house, who told him that they continued to suffer with the apparitions of the mirror, so they decided to take a priest to bless the house. But this did not help much, because a few days later, the phenomena happened again. So, as a final solution, they decided to go to a psychic, who found that the specter was inside a room, and through her rituals, she locked the specter in that place. This solved their problem. The apparition stopped then. According to what the psychic told them, everything would be fine, as long as they kept the door locked. I always wondered who that horrendous specter was. I always assumed it would be the first owner, who was dedicated to witchcraft. That was obvious. There was the booklet, and that crap in the drawer. Who knows what else would be in there? Luckily, it did not affect my life, that encounter with that witch. Nothing more than a scare. Thank you for joining us for this spine-tingling story. We hope you found it both thrilling and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed this video, please consider participating in our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing it with your friends. Your support goes a long way in helping us create more engaging content for you. Goodbye, and may you always tread carefully in the world of the unknown.